Behind the golden costumes and epic scale of 1963's Cleopatra lies one of the most chaotic productions in Hollywood history. From Vatican controversies to nationwide material shortages, the making of this film was as dramatic as the story it told. Here are 20 facts about what really happened behind the scenes. If you're interested in classic Hollywood history and production stories, consider subscribing for more content like this. Number 20. Mankiewicz wanted two separate films. Director Joseph L. Mankiewicz originally envisioned Cleopatra as two separate films that would be released independently. The first would be titled Caesar and Cleopatra, focusing on the relationship between the Egyptian queen and Julius Caesar, while the second would be Antony and Cleopatra, covering her later romance and political alliance with Mark Antony. This approach would have allowed each historical period to receive proper development and pacing. The studio executives at 20th Century Fox rejected this idea because they were concerned about the financial risk of producing two separate epic films. They insisted that all the material be combined into a single release, which created significant challenges for Mankiewicz as he tried to balance two distinct love stories and political narratives within one film. The compromise ultimately resulted in a nearly 4-hour runtime that tested audience patience. Though Mankiewicz always believed his original vision would have been more effective, this decision haunted the production throughout post-production, as editors struggled to create a coherent narrative from footage that had essentially been shot as two different movies. Number 19. The film had over 26,000 costumes. The costume department created an astounding 26,000 individual costumes for Cleopatra, making it one of the largest wardrobe efforts in cinema history. Costume designer Irene Sharaf and Rennie oversaw teams of seamstresses who worked around the clock to create authentic-looking Egyptian, Roman, and period-appropriate clothing for the massive cast. Elizabeth Taylor alone wore 65 different costume changes throughout the film, each one meticulously designed to reflect Cleopatra's status, mood, and the political message she was trying to convey in each scene. The famous gold cape she wore during the Rome entrance scene weighed over 60 pounds and required multiple people to help Taylor put it on and take it off between takes. The attention to detail extended to even the background extras, who wore carefully researched tunics, robes, and armor that reflected the social hierarchy of ancient Egypt and Rome. The scale of the costume production was so massive that it created its own mini-industry in Rome, employing hundreds of local craftspeople and fabric suppliers for over 2 years. Number 18. Mankiewicz wrote the script while filming. Joseph L. Mankiewicz worked under the unusual pressure of writing the screenplay as production progressed, rather than following a completed script. This unconventional approach created chaos on set because actors often didn't know what scenes they would be filming until days or even hours before cameras rolled. Mankiewicz would spend his evenings writing dialogue and blocking out scenes, then hand the pages to actors the next morning for immediate filming. This method gave him creative flexibility to adapt the story based on what was working on screen and to respond to the developing chemistry between Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. However, it also meant that the production schedule was constantly in flux, with expensive sets and thousands of extras, sometimes sitting idle while Mankiewicz finished writing their scenes. This writing process became even more problematic during post-production, when editors discovered they had hours of footage with no clear roadmap for how the scenes were supposed to connect into a coherent narrative. Number 17. The Vatican threatened Elizabeth Taylor. When Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton began their affair on the Cleopatra set in 1962, the Vatican responded with unprecedented public condemnation. The Vatican City newspaper published an open letter attacking Taylor for what they called erotic vagrancy, and the Catholic Church's official stance was that her behavior was so immoral that her children should be taken from her. The controversy escalated beyond public shaming when Taylor faced actual physical threats. Someone attempted to bring a bomb onto the set with the apparent intention of attacking the actress, forcing Italian authorities to provide armed FBI protection for 5 consecutive days during filming. Taylor later recalled this as a terrifying week where she couldn't focus on her performance because she was genuinely afraid for her safety. The scandal had lasting effects on Taylor's public image and her relationship with religious institutions, though she later said the intensity of the opposition only strengthened her resolve and her bond with Burton. Number 16. Italy ran out of building materials. The production of Cleopatra caused a genuine nationwide shortage of construction materials across Italy. When 20th Century Fox moved operations from London to Rome's Cinecittà Studios in 1961, they needed to construct 79 elaborate sets, including a recreation of ancient Alexandria, the Roman Forum, and Cleopatra's palace. The Roman Forum set alone was built 3 times larger than the actual historical forum. The demand from this single film production was so intense that lumberyards throughout Italy found their entire inventories being purchased by the Cleopatra team. Regular construction companies couldn't get the materials they needed for homes, businesses, and other building projects because Fox was buying up all available wood, metal, Specialist suppliers realized they could charge significantly higher prices due to the desperate demand from Hollywood, creating a permanent inflation in the cost of film supplies in Italy. This material shortage hurt the Italian film industry for years afterward, as local producers found that the costs of making films at Cinecittà had become prohibitively expensive, contributing to a decline in the quality and number of Italian-made epic films. Number 15. Italian crews didn't understand the need for silence. Director Joseph L. Mankiewicz faced one of the most frustrating technical problems when Italian film crews continued working noisily during filming because they had no understanding of why silence was necessary. In Italy, every single film was post-dubbed, meaning all dialogue and sound effects were added in a recording studio after filming was completed, so Italian crews had never learned the importance of maintaining quiet while cameras rolled. While Mankiewicz tried to film dramatic scenes between Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, capturing their actual voices in real time, Italian carpenters working on other sets would continue their construction work without any consideration for nearby filming. The constant hammering, sawing, and construction noise made it impossible to record usable dialogue. Every time Mankiewicz called action, the pounding of hammers would echo through the sound equipment, completely ruining the take. The production lost hours of valuable filming time because Mankiewicz had to repeatedly stop scenes and try to explain through language barriers why silence was essential, leaving Italian workers confused about why they needed to stop their construction work when actors could easily record their lines later in a studio. Number 14. Taylor's $1 million salary started as a joke. Elizabeth Taylor became the first Hollywood star to earn $1 million for a single movie role, but this groundbreaking salary happened completely by accident. In 1958, when producer Walter Wanger was trying to cast Cleopatra, he approached Taylor while she was filming Suddenly last summer. She wasn't available to take his call, so Wanger spoke with her husband Eddie Fisher instead. When Fisher explained the offer to Taylor, she was in a playful mood and didn't think the studio would seriously pay what she considered an outrageous amount. She laughed and told her husband to relay that she would do it for $1 million, assuming this would end the conversation. Fisher dutifully called Wanger back and delivered the message, expecting the producer to laugh or hang up. Instead, Wanger paused and then shocked everyone by saying the studio would accept her terms. In October 1959, Taylor officially signed her contract and made Hollywood history as the first actor to receive a seven-figure salary for a single picture, all because of what started as a throwaway joke about an amount she never expected anyone to take seriously. Number 13. Caesarion was recast due to growth spurts. The young actor playing Caesarion, Cleopatra's son with Julius Caesar, had to be completely replaced during filming because he literally grew too tall while the production dragged on for months. Caesarion was supposed to be around 4 years old in the film, and the original American child actor was the perfect size when filming began. One of the most elaborate scenes was Cleopatra's grand entrance into Rome, which had to be postponed for several months while the crew waited for perfect lighting conditions. During these delays, the young American boy experienced a significant growth spurt. By the time the crew was ready to film the Rome entrance scene, he had grown so much taller that he no longer looked like the same 4-year-old character who had appeared in earlier scenes. The production team had no choice but to cast a local Italian boy who was the right height. If you watch the movie carefully, you can clearly hear Caesarion's voice change dramatically between scenes from an American accent to a thick Italian accent, making it obvious that two different children played the same character. Number 12. Extras shouted Liz, Liz instead of Cleopatra. One of the most expensive sequences in Cleopatra nearly had to be completely reshot because thousands of Italian extras got so excited about seeing Elizabeth Taylor that they forgot they were acting in a movie about ancient Egypt. The scene of Cleopatra's entrance into Rome required thousands of extras dressed as Roman citizens lining the streets. They were supposed to cheer Cleopatra, as Taylor rode through on her golden sphinx. By 1962, Elizabeth Taylor had become one of the most famous people in the world due to her highly publicized affair with Richard Burton. The Italian extras were completely starstruck when they saw the legendary actress up close in her stunning costume. When cameras started rolling and Taylor made her entrance, the excitement became impossible to control. Instead of staying in character as ancient Roman citizens, they began shouting Liz, Liz, at the top of their lungs, completely breaking the illusion. Director Joseph L. Mankiewicz watched in horror as months of preparation nearly went to waste, with the scene coming dangerously close to being completely unusable and requiring a complete reshoot. Number 11. A gelato seller was caught on camera. The Rome entrance scene had to be completely reshot when editors discovered that one enterprising extra had turned the sweltering film set into his own ice cream business. Filming took place during the hottest part of the Italian summer, with thousands of extras dressed in heavy Roman costumes standing for hours in the blazing sun. As the hours dragged on, the crowd became increasingly uncomfortable and desperate for relief from the heat. One particularly clever extra brought a small cart of gelato onto the set and quietly sold frozen treats to fellow performers between takes. He thought he was being discreet enough to avoid detection by cameras, but he underestimated how carefully every inch of the massive set would be examined during editing. When film editors reviewed the footage weeks later, they spotted the gelato vendor clearly visible in several shots, dressed in Roman robes but obviously selling modern Italian ice cream to other costumed extras who were lining up to buy his cold treats. The sight of ancient Romans enjoying gelato made the expensive footage completely unusable, forcing the production to organize and film the entire sequence all over again. Number 10. Taylor's tracheotomy scar had to be hidden. Elizabeth Taylor's makeup team faced the challenge of concealing a visible scar on her neck that would have been historically impossible in ancient Egypt. The scar came from a life-saving emergency tracheotomy that Taylor underwent in March 1961 when she developed severe pneumonia. Doctors had to make an incision in her throat to insert a breathing tube, which left a permanent and noticeable mark across her neck. The makeup artists had to develop special techniques using heavy makeup, strategic lighting, and costume design to ensure Taylor's neck area was either covered or had shadows falling in just the right way to conceal the mark throughout the entire production. Interestingly, Taylor herself was proud of the scar because it represented her survival of a near-death experience, and she affectionately called it her war wound, often appearing in public without trying to cover it. Number 9. Drowsy doves refuse to fly. One of the film's visual effects involved a miniature pyramid designed to dramatically open and release white doves, but the Roman heat made the birds so sleepy that they refused to participate. The inside of the pyramid prop became incredibly warm as it sat in direct sunlight for hours while the crew prepared for filming, and the doves found this environment perfectly comfortable for taking a nap. When cameras rolled and the pyramid split apart, the crew expected to see doves soaring into the sky. Instead, they saw sleepy birds sitting contentedly inside the prop, completely ignoring their cue. The production team had to assign one crew member to hide inside the pyramid with the doves to physically shoo the birds out at the right moment by waving his arms and making noise. Unfortunately, this turned out to be extremely unpleasant because the nervous doves responded to the stress by defecating all over the inside of the pyramid, and the poor crew member trying to help them perform. Number 8. Egypt initially banned Elizabeth Taylor. The Egyptian government initially refused to allow Elizabeth Taylor to enter their country to film scenes for Cleopatra because she had converted to Judaism when she married her fourth husband, Eddie Fisher. Taylor had converted to Judaism in 1959, and at the time, Egypt had strict policies against allowing Jewish visitors due to ongoing political tensions in the Middle East. This created a major crisis for 20th Century Fox because the studio had already spent enormous amounts on pre-production planning and location scouting in Egypt. However, the Egyptian government soon realized their decision would cost them a significant economic opportunity. The production represented millions of American dollars that would benefit the Egyptian economy through local crew members, equipment rentals, accommodations, and transportation. After calculating the potential financial impact, government officials quickly reversed their decision and announced that Taylor would be welcome to film in Egypt after all. Number 7. Fox had the world's third biggest navy. The naval battle scenes required so many ships that 20th Century Fox temporarily assembled what was jokingly referred to as the world's third largest navy. The movie included spectacular naval sequences, crucial to telling Cleopatra's story, particularly the Battle of Actium. To recreate these epic sea battles, the production team needed dozens of vessels ranging from massive galleys that could hold hundreds of extras dressed as soldiers to smaller boats for close-up shots. Many vessels had to be specially modified or completely reconstructed to look like authentic ancient ships. The logistics of coordinating all these boats and managing the safety of hundreds of cast and crew members on water required military-level planning. The sheer number of vessels Fox assembled was so impressive that industry observers joked the studio had created the third largest navy in the world, behind only the United States and British naval forces. Number 6. The director was fired but had to be rehired. Joseph L. Mankiewicz was fired from Cleopatra during the editing phase, but 20th Century Fox quickly discovered they had made a terrible mistake because only Mankiewicz understood how all the pieces fit together. Studio executives fired him because the production had spiraled from an original budget of $2 million to over $40 million, and studio head Daryl F. Zanuck wanted someone to blame. However, executives soon realized they had created a bigger problem. Mankiewicz had been writing the script as he filmed each scene rather than following a traditional pre-written screenplay, so there was no complete shooting script that other editors could use. When the new editing team tried to piece together hours of footage shot over nearly 3 years, they discovered the material made no sense without Mankiewicz's guidance. Only he knew which scenes connected to each other and how the complex storylines were intended to weave together. Studio executives found themselves in the embarrassing position of having to ask Mankiewicz to return to the project they had just fired him from. This unusual situation highlighted how unconventional the entire production had become, with standard Hollywood procedures completely abandoned in favor of improvisation. Number 5. Chili was air-freighted from Hollywood. Studio executive Spiros Skouras went to extraordinary lengths to keep Elizabeth Taylor happy by having her favorite chili specially prepared at a famous Hollywood restaurant and flown thousands of miles across the Atlantic. The chili came from Chasen's, one of the most exclusive restaurants in Hollywood during the 1960s, famous for serving the biggest stars in entertainment. Taylor had become completely obsessed with Chasen's chili and considered it her absolute favorite comfort food, especially when she was feeling stressed or homesick during long filming periods away from California. When Taylor mentioned how much she missed it, Skouras arranged for the restaurant to prepare fresh batches and had the food specially packaged and loaded onto airplanes for the long journey from Los Angeles to Rome. This expensive and logistically complicated operation was repeated multiple times throughout the lengthy production, demonstrating just how far the studio was willing to go to accommodate their temperamental but invaluable star who was being paid an unprecedented $1 million for her performance. Number 4. Female extras. When on strike, the female extras who played Cleopatra's servants organized a formal strike during filming at Cinecittà Studios because they were being constantly harassed by Italian male extras and crew members. The costume design called for many female extras to wear revealing outfits supposed to represent the exotic atmosphere of ancient Egypt, including thin flowing fabrics, low necklines, and exposed midriffs. However, the combination of these revealing costumes and the predominantly male Italian film crew created an uncomfortable and inappropriate working environment, with Italian men treating the female performers as objects of entertainment rather than as professional extras. The situation became so problematic that female extras felt they had no choice but to organize themselves and announce they would refuse to continue working until the studio implemented proper protections. The strike created a serious problem because these female extras were essential for elaborate palace scenes and crowd sequences central to the film's visual spectacle, forcing the production team to negotiate and agree to demands for better security and supervision. Number 3. The film lost money. Despite being won at the box office, Cleopatra became the highest-grossing film of 1963, earning $57.7 million in the United States and Canada, yet it initially lost money because of its staggering production and marketing costs totaling $44 million. The budget of $44 million is equivalent to over $400 million in today's money, making it one of the most expensive movies ever made. The financial disaster nearly bankrupted 20th Century Fox, forcing the studio to sell off its production lot, which eventually became Century City in Los Angeles. While Cleopatra did eventually break even years later through re-releases, television rights, and home video sales, the immediate financial impact was devastating. The film received 9 nominations at the 36th Academy Awards, including Best Picture, and won 4 Oscars for its technical achievements in cinematography, art direction, costume design, and special effects, proving that financial success and artistic recognition don't always go hand in hand. Number 2. The original cut was over 4 hours long. Cleopatra premiered with a runtime of 248 minutes, more than 4 hours long, making it one of the longest films ever released by a major studio. Director Joseph L. Mankiewicz had fought to preserve his vision of the film as 2 separate releases, but studio executives insisted on combining everything into a single movie. After the premiere, Fox became concerned that the extreme length was limiting the number of daily showings theaters could schedule, which directly impacted potential box office revenue. The studio made the decision to cut the film down to 992 minutes for wider release, removing over an hour of material that included important character development moments and plot details. Film historians and critics have long argued that many of the narrative problems audiences experienced with Cleopatra stemmed from this brutal editing process rather than from the original material, and today, significant portions of the original longer cut have been lost forever. Number 1. The film had 3 directors and 2 complete productions. Cleopatra is essentially 2 completely different movies made with different directors, different leading men, and different scripts, making it one of the most expensive do-overs in Hollywood history. The original version began filming in 1960 at Pinewood Studios in London under director Ruben Mamoulian, with Peter Finch as Julius Caesar and Stephen Boyd as Mark Antony, alongside Elizabeth Taylor's Cleopatra. When Taylor developed severe pneumonia that became life-threatening, the production shut down completely. The combination of Taylor's health crisis, terrible weather conditions in England, and mounting costs convinced studio executives to abandon everything they had already filmed and completely restart the production. They brought in Joseph L. Mankiewicz to replace Mamoulian as director and moved the entire production from London to Rome's Cinecittà Studios. Most significantly, they replaced both original male leads with Rex Harrison as Julius Caesar and Richard Burton as Mark Antony. Months of work and millions of dollars worth of footage, sets, costumes, and preparation were simply thrown away as if the first production had never happened. The final film audiences saw in 1963 was actually the second complete version of Cleopatra, created by an entirely different creative team with a fundamentally different vision of how the story should be told. If you enjoyed learning about the chaotic production behind one of Hollywood's most infamous films, please like this video, leave a comment about which fact surprised you most, and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes stories from classic cinema. Thanks for watching.